You only finished out of the top 4 times during that year, just part failures and things like that. You would meet and marry Pam. When did y'all meet?
We met in the summer of 1980. 1980.
So you met Pam Allison. This is Donnie's daughter.
Yep.
In 1980.
Yep.
Y'all dated all that time, or just kind
of? Yes, we dated for almost 7 years before we actually tied a knot in '86.
Daggone, what took so long?
Donnie Allison would have been his father-in-law. That's why.
No, we, you know, I don't know. It just one of them things. You want to make sure everything was right.
Yeah, sure.
I don't really know. I mean, we was. I mean, you know, she was supporting what I was doing and going with me everywhere. And
her daddy, what's going on with her daddy? Her daddy was Donnie was still racing a little bit.
He was
in '80, obviously, but he would get injured.
Yep.
Pretty severely. Yep. That would actually be the reason he would retire.
That's correct.
So you were going through that with her, I guess, at that point in time. I know there was a real nasty wreck for him at Charlotte in '81 or '82.
It was
that put him out for a while. He never kind of really recovered from that. Was that difficult? I mean, I imagine it was, but I mean, do you recall much about that time?
I do. You know, it was very difficult on her.
Yeah.
You know, being her dad, obviously. You know, and I noticed a lot of times, like with me, and you know, she would get in a wreck or anything like that. You know, it kind of
shake her up a little bit.
But for the most part, you know, she got over it.
Did you spend much time around Kenny or Ronald or Donald?
Yeah.
Kenny and Ronald and Donald are Donnie's sons.
That's correct.
And I know them really well. I went to work for them a little bit when I was really young. Incredible group of guys.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So
very smart.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So what were they like they were kids back then, right?
They were kids. Well, Ronald and Donald were kids.
Yeah.
Kenny and I Kenny was a few years behind me, not a lot. But they were all sharp kids.
What were they doing?
They could build anything.
Were they just piddling with their dad's stuff?
Donnie had a short track car. They were going with him some.
Mm-hmm. Did they ever go with you?
Occasionally they did.
Mm-hmm.
They did. But Kenny and Donald had moved to Fort Myers, Florida with Bill Collins.
Damn.
Running Donnie's Busch Grand National car team for Bill Collins.
Okay.
And they was building all the cars down there at that time.
Who's Bill Collins? Was he driving it?
Bill Collins owned a big Toyota dealership.
He owned the car?
In Fort Myers, Florida, yep.
Was that red and white Miller car, 23?
It was red and white, 23 jerseys.
Yeah, jerseys.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So, Donnie drove it a couple times. I think Davey might have drove it a couple times. I'm not sure.
That's
Bobby,
correct.
maybe?
Yep.
Because it would run like 5 or 6 races a year, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Charlotte and big places.
Yep, the big races.
Yep. Damn, that's cool.
Yep. And then I guess I'm not sure what year. Probably had to be 80. I'm guessing 88, 87, 88. They moved. Kenny ended up Bill ended up shutting his team down, and I guess Kenny ended up and the twins ended up buying all that stuff and moved it to the Carolinas, and then they started building their car building business there.
They're right. They're right close by where I live, or that building is. I think they still own that property over there off of 70.
Wow.
And I
didn't know that.
They're very close.
Yeah.
Are they? And I used to. I got a speeding ticket one time, and Dad said, "Well, I guess you need to go get a job to pay for your lawyer to pay for your ticket." And so I went and acquired a job at Kenny's, and Kenny put me to work for a summer working on Legends cars. We had a lot of fun.
Yep. They are a fun group.
Were you tight with the Allisons when you met Pam? I'm assuming you were, right? That's how you met her?
No, what happened, we was in Panama City, Florida. Davey Allison, myself, Jimmy Kitchens, and another guy named
He's the spot for
Sammy Sanfilippo.
It's so funny how we're all kind of somewhat connected in funny ways.
But the four of us was riding up and down the strip hollering at all the girls.
Oh, hell.
And we had the Bobby Allison van, and man, we were
You were a hot ticket.
You know,
Allison van.
Yeah.
It's probably red and white Miller van.
Yeah,
right.
you know it is.
People thought there was beer inside.
Oh yeah. But we were going down the strip there in Panama City, and like I said, it was bumper to bumper, traffic creeping along. And anyway, Davey says, "Well, hey, there's Pam and Lisa." You know, I said, "Who's Pam and Lisa?" He said, Pam is Donnie's daughter. I'd never met her, you know. And all I'd heard was Donnie had a good-looking daughter, but that's really all I knew, you know. And so anyway, and Lisa's her friend. Okay, so hey, let's go over and turn in and see what they're doing. So we turn in there, and Davey rolls down his window. He's driving. I'm in the passenger seat, and he rolls down the window. And Pam, Lisa walk up to his side and said, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" Davey said, "Oh, we're just riding around, you know, hollering all the girls and all that stuff." And so Pam said, "Well, who you got in here?" And he said, "Well, I have, you know, Sammy in the back and Jimmy and Wayman Stricklin." And that was what that was my racing name. That was my real name. You know, it was a few years later, you know, before I actually went by Hut.
Yeah.
You know,
my Amy's grandfather's name is Wayman.
Yep.
Yeah, my wife.
Really?
Yeah, it's a unique name.
But
Yeah.
we so anyway. Pam says, "Well, what are you doing here? What are you doing in there?" Points to me, and I'm like, so she walks around the front of the van, and I roll down the window, and she comes around and she's pointing her finger. She says, "I hate your guts." She says, "You beat Davey every week, and I don't like that, you know." And so I just rolled the window up. You know, I was hated. You know,
Oh, damn.
I was really hated because I won a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and it's just one of them things. And so anyway, I was like, okay, whatever, you know. So I rolled the window up, and so I told Davey, "Let's go." So we go and we leave them. So the next day, Davey says, we meet Davey somewhere, and Davey said, "Man, I can't believe Pam, how much she really hates you." You know, so I don't know why she hates me. She don't even know me, you know. And so anyway, make a long story short, we about I was end of June, something like that. 4th of July, I get a postcard from her. It says, "I'm in Daytona with my dad at the firecracker race, and we'll be back, you know, from home such day. You know, here's my phone number. Give me a call." You know.
Dang.
So I'm like, what?
Didn't hate you that much.
It doesn't hate me that much. So anyway, so make a long story short, first night she got back, we called, must talked, you know, 3/4 of the night, and been together basically ever since.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Mike Alexander's driving for Bobby, and Mike gets an injury, has a couple injuries, and you're offered to help. So this is a pretty cool moment for you because you're going to drive for these people that are your family. You know, you're married into this Allison family, know them well.
Yep.
And Bobby's trying to get his team going. It's got some beautiful Buicks, a Ray Bessie sponsorship. And middle of the season, you're going to jump in there. And you had some great runs. Run second to Davey at Michigan. Everybody was super thrilled with that. You're starting. I guess right around that time is a point where we're starting to hear about you maybe getting inducted into the Alabama gang. So you got to feel like that. Maybe finally things are on the right path.
I did.
Yeah. So driving for Bobby, how great was that experience?
A dream come true. He was one of my childhood heroes. Him and Donnie and Red Farmer. And to drive for Bobby was just probably the most awesome thing you could do. It was just I didn't think life could get any better at that time than drive for him.
Yeah, he put a lot of effort to try to get his deal going. From what I remember, looking back on it now, you can see where, there's a couple drivers that became owners that weren't willing to put the monetary risk forward. Right. But Bobby was. Yeah. He knew that he wanted to win races, and he's gonna invest to do it. And I think that's where the speed in that car, come from. But what was, he also, my own opinion of Bobby as a driver, he often was his own worst enemy. Not on the racetrack, mainly, but mostly with the people he drove for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was driving juniors cars in the early 70s,
Yep.
winning a lot of races.
Yep.
Gets in a disagreement about, you know, the direction of things or something, right? Something could have been monetary or whatever, and goes and drives his own car.
Yep.
He'd rather just do his own thing. I'm going to go where I get to make the call, you
Yep.
know, and drive his own race car, and Kel Yarborough wins 3 championships in a row driving that thing.
Right.
And then, you know, but eventually, you know, he gets in the Dygar deal, wins him a championship that he deserved. But what was he like as an owner?
Very good. I can't say I had one bad moment with him. You know, he was so, and I appreciated everything he did for me as far as, you know, would be flying back after a race, and, you know, he'd say, you know, well, I think you need to look at this next time doing this, or try this next time, or, you know, he used to tell me all the time, he said, you know, you stick your finger in a rattlesnake's mouth a time or two, and you got to, you know, take my finger and, you know, slap it. Don't quit sticking your finger in a rattlesnake's mouth a lot of times. But, you know, I would see a hole and I'd go for it, and, you know, and rather than having a little bit of patience. And he was right. Everything he said was always right, and I, you know, for the most part, and, you know, I really enjoyed driving for him.
Yeah. They started struggling, though, in the 92 season, having parts failures and things just not working out. And did you tell Bobby that you weren't coming back?
What happened in 92, we were having issues like in the race with falling out, with different things like that, and like you said, and you know, we'd start happy hour, and we'd go out and we'd run 15 minutes of happy hour, and the guys would say, "Man, we the fastest car here. Let's load up and, you know, go to the motel." Basically, we'd do that, and then the next day, you know, something would break or fall off the car that you know, had we stuck around a little bit longer, or, you know, checked on the bottom, and, you know, nut and bolted the car, you know, everything a little bit better.
Yeah,
things like that wouldn't happen.
Right.
And you know, we started having a few things like that happen, and you know, I told Bobby, you know, Bobby, we need to have a talk with these guys. I mean, they're you know, love to party, nothing wrong with that. That wasn't a time or place to do that. And you know, and Bobby said, well, you know, he said, these guys, you know, they're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so you know what that people in Milwaukee like to drink, and says, well, nothing wrong with that. It's just not the right time or place to do that. So, so anyway, we at that time, you know, I had people knocking on my doors. You
did. You were showing. So that's a great moment. I wanted to make a point at. So you're in Bobby's car. You started having great runs. When the car stayed together, y'all usually did show up, run fast in practice, and then back it up in the race.
Yep.
And so finally, people are starting to notice you, and some opportunities are starting to open up where you can actually go to Bobby and say, "Hey, man, I got to do something different, or
right.
we got to fix this, or else I got this other opportunity."
Yep.
And that's kind of how that went down.
Pretty much.
How do you justify? I mean, how do you justify that with your marriage into the family, and how do you help everybody understand what this decision is all about?
I think it was just basically a business decision.
Did everybody get it?
For the most part, I think so. I mean, it.
What, no hurt feelings?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was a little bit there, you know, when it all went down. But
well, how involved is Donnie with the team at all?
None, not really, not really that team. He was going. He would go to the racetracks and put his 2 cents in occasionally. But for the most part, Bobby, you know, he run his team. He had competent people that could do the job. You know, the engine builders, the crew chiefs, the guys that work on the team. But just, you know, we just need to. We was having things happen that, you know, falling out of races and things like that. They just, you know, it was, you know, I was just ready to do something different.
You left, and before the end of the year, you end up driving for Larry Hedrick in the final race of the year.
Mm-hmm.
How did that? So why couldn't you get to the end?
Well, I didn't leave. Bobby had we run Darlington, and I think it was we had a rain delay. That was our first race with Ford in the '92 season. Mm-hmm. I think the race ended up getting rained out, if I remember correctly. It was done already over halfway anyway, and they presented me with a release to release me from my contract.
Did something happen during that race?
No. Well,
was there like
kind of what led up to that? Let's back up a little bit. Junior had talked to me about driving. At that time, didn't know who.
McDonald's car, yeah, 27.
Yep. And I think Bobby, obviously didn't feel good about Junior. From old times.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
And so I think probably the only one I could have went.
He got ticked off at that.
Yeah, and I get it. That was fine.
And he found he's already. So is Bobby probably already looking at his future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he's going. You're out there finding your next thing, and he's going. Well, I need to go ahead and have a plan.
Yep.
And that plan came together sooner rather than later.
Right.
That's kind of how that went.
Jimmy Switzer?
No, actually, Jimmy wasn't the first one in there, I don't think. They had, I want to say Jeff Purvis drove it once or twice.
Yeah.
I want to say Chuck Bound might have drove it.
He did. I remember Chuck driving that car once or twice.
And there was
got a couple
fill-in guys. Then I think Spencer come on after all that.
Yeah.
For that year.
Just to stay consistent with following your
everything.
Just gotta keep the streak alive. There's no way, though, that happened without hard feelings. I mean, the family, look, I know families too well. And families, even in the, with Bobby, I mean, like, I don't know. There had to have been some times where y'all were like, man, that's screwed up.
Well, it really didn't, not on my part. I understood where he was coming from, and I had a place to go.
Okay.
That was a good part. I didn't have a ride for the rest of the year, but I had a ride in the coming year. But I did have a few rides that I picked up from here, time to time, so at least I did have a place to go.
I meant to ask you this earlier. I'm assuming you just signed a contract. You said it was a business relationship in terms of that, but you're under contract though, right? With Bobby.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so when you sign a contract with him, when you guys negotiate that, I mean, like, was it pretty straightforward? I mean, was there any type of? I just know how when families start getting into the business side of it, sometimes it gets messy, right?
Yes. It was kind of a weird deal because we had Bobby was family,
right,
and then the manager there was family. He was
okay.
He was married to Bobby's sister.
All right.
And he was a former lawyer.
Okay,
and,
so this is getting more complicated to me.
He had done contracts for me and Bobby, and then it was kind of and then it was kind of a big mess.
Yeah, it seems like there could be conflict of interest or something.
It was. I mean, but it was a deal. I was always a type. Look, I mean, if nobody wants me there, I don't want to be there. That's the last thing. You don't want to be in a place where you're not wanted.
That's fair. Yeah.
Because I mean, it just wasn't a good thing. Wasn't a good thing.
In '93, Davey's killed.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of your best friends.
Yep.
First of all, I guess how did you handle that situation? How did that affect your focus and your opinion or your position on your future in racing?
Well, back up a little bit. In '93, obviously I lost my racetrack best friend. I lost my personal best friend in Calera, a guy named Mike Crawford. Mm-hmm. And I lost, there was about 2 or 3 of my really close friends that got killed during that, month or two right there that I'm like, man, the whole world's closing in. What's going on?
Yeah.
And, but but there's no doubt, Davey's thing was hit us pretty hard. Just trying to stay focused and, Davey and I, fly the racetrack together. I'd fly with him, for the most part, most of the time. Did a lot of stuff together, and that one hit home, especially, for Pam too, because it was obviously her cousin, and they grew up together. And, it was a pretty tough deal.
Yeah.
Did I see a note? Were you potentially supposed to be in that helicopter?
Yes. What had happened during the '93 season at Loudon? Davey and I had talked on Saturday. He said, Neil Bonnet's son, David, is going to be testing at Talladega Monday. He said, if you want to, come fly. We'll take him helicopter and fly up to Talladega. So I said, okay. I said, that sounds like fun. We'll go up there and help David. So anyway, we Saturday night at Loudon, all of the McDonald's crew and myself went out to eat at a place, and we all got food poisoning real bad. And at a place called Cheers up there. And anyway, we all did eat the same thing and what have you. Anyway, we'd spend all night, throwing up and everything, and come Sunday morning, myself and the rest of the crew that went out to eat that night, was all in the infirmary the next morning at the racetrack, getting, fluids and stuff. Yeah. And ended up running about 20 laps in the race, and I had to get out of the car. It was just, I had nothing in me, couldn't hold my head up. And so anyway, they carried me back, put me in a local hospital to get all IVs and all IV'd up. And so Davey ended up running the race, and he flew on back, and I was going to end up having to take a commercial flight back Monday morning when I got out of the hospital. And so when I landed in Birmingham, I'd actually forgot about, I'd agreed with Davey on going with him. And when I got back into Birmingham, I'd seen, walking down the airport, and I seen on TV where, Davey Allison had a helicopter crash, and it wasn't good. Looks really bad. And so anyway, then got home, and we got Pam, and we come back to the hospital. And of course, David did pass away, but it was just it was a very bad deal.
Yeah. Did you know Red was in the helicopter with him?
I didn't till I got to the hospital.
Yeah.
I sure didn't. I hadn't even dreamed anybody else was even going to be in there. As far as, because I was supposed to be there. I'd agreed with him. I was going to fly back with him after the Loudon race, and then we was going to get up and go the helicopter Monday morning and fly over and help David.
Yeah.
But
do you look back on do you look back on that next year? Say you had all these tragic things that happened that affected you, and do you look back on that last year and second guess some of the choices you made? Do you feel like that? So you're a decision to change cars, right? To leave Junior Johnson and go drive for Travis Carter. Do you feel like I guess what I'm trying to say is, when I think back to 2001 when Dad passed away, man, I was in a fog for a year, and I shouldn't have been handed any responsibility.
Absolutely.
To make a decision on anything, right? Because I was not going to make the best decision, right? So, do you kind of look back and go, man, I wonder what if I'd have tried to stay with Junior, or maybe I would have been better off to have done, because I imagine you were probably in a bit of a fog.
No, without a doubt, you're right. Especially when you look back on it, you don't realize a lot, when you're in the middle of the fire. Right. Like you do, a year later or 2 years later, or 3 years later, just, man, I shouldn't have been out there doing that. And, it does, it had to affect the performance, there's no doubt. You know, when you have that kind of tragic stuff happen that close to home, you know, you got to think, am I doing the right thing here?
Yeah.
You know, Clifford died, what is it, a couple months later?
Or a year later.
A year later.
Yep.
That's right. A year later. I mean, the Allisons got hit with so many things
Sure
all at
did.
once. The family dynamic had to be shaken, you know, just to the core.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I can't even imagine the amount of grief that was going on within the family.
It was that. I mean, they were. The family was definitely feeling the grief, without a doubt. It was pretty phenomenal how much it was.